Hi, well, thank you. My name is Walter Lohman. I'm director of the Asian Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation. I want to thank the Asan Foundation, Professor Han and MJ Chung for having me here. We have a terrific relationship with them, as a lot of folks do around town, so I'm very pleased and honored to be given this role today. Our session is called the Virtual Alliance. I think maybe unintentionally, because I don't want to pick on Asan, that title kind of encapsulates a problem, in that the alliance between the U.S., Japan, and Korea is essentially something we can't really talk about in full. First of all, Japan is the unspoken member of the Virtual Alliance, and Japan's not listed in any of the titles of the programs. I don't know if that's on purpose, but it's something to note. The other thing is that it actually should be called the U.S. ROK Japan Alliance. But if you have an alliance between those three countries, then it must have a purpose. It must be aligned against something. So you can't really say out loud what it's aligned against, right? I mean, it must be China, right? I mean, if it's not about China, then what's it about? And that's sort of what I want to talk about here. I hope we can get into that a little bit. The sort of grand strategy of an alliance, a strategy period. What is the U.S., Japan, Korea alliance all about? Does it have some sort of strategic rationale? In the nearest term, it's about the Korean Peninsula. It's about U.S. troops and ships, Marines, aircraft stationed in Japan and on call to respond to a contingency on the Korean Peninsula. But after that, beyond that, what all does it mean if it doesn't mean if it's not about balancing or otherwise somehow managing the environment around the rise of China? To help us unpack that set of issues, and it's much deeper and broader than I've been able to lay out here in 2 minutes, we have Michael Auslin, who's a resident scholar and director of the Japan Studies at American Enterprise Institute. Bong Youngshik, who's a senior research fellow at the Asan Institute, and Nishino Junya from Keio. He's a professor at Keio. I have to admit, I'm not going to go through all the bios. You've got those in your book. But the one thing that jumped out at me was the extensive Ivy League connections of all these guys. The Korean Ivy League in one sense, and Keio University, and of course Michael was a Yale professor. So if these guys can't figure it out, I don't know what we're going to do. So with that, let me turn it over to Michael, get us started, and then hopefully what I'd like to do is just get to questions and have discussion as much as we can. Thanks.
Well, thanks. I mean, if you're relying on us to figure it out, then we're all in trouble. So it's a pleasure to be here, as everyone said. It's great to be back with Asan and to be part of the inaugural forum, and Temje and Chaebong and Youngshik. Thanks so much for having me here. And I'd also say that Walter mentioned the Japan specter floating around a little bit, certainly in this panel. Asan's one of the very few Korean or Asian think tanks, intellectual research institutes that actually deals with Japan and deals with it significantly, and had a major international conference a few years ago. And I think it's very much to be commended that Asan thinks about Japan in ways that are very proactive and not just the easy ways that a lot of places in Asia do. So with that, I guess looking at based on the composition of the panel, I'm giving the American perspective. I don't really feel that that's the role that I should be doing. I'm not here speaking for the U.S. government, obviously, but maybe my few minutes here are best spent looking at it from how an American would look at this question of the virtual alliance, and then the tripartite or trilateral relationship. And we might call it the trilateral relationship of the future, and it always will be. That's, I think, pretty much where we stand with U.S., Japan, and Korean relations. I think, Walter, I think it is more than just China. I think it's more than just managing China, and it certainly can be. And maybe I'm getting a little cynical after a few years here in Washington and sort of dealing with the politics both at home and abroad. But I guess I would start out with a sort of plaintive cry, which is that it really just shouldn't be this hard. It should not be this hard. In fact, we shouldn't be having this panel at all. We should instead be having a panel on the very fruitful, dynamic, forward-looking, natural